Hey everybody, it's Steve Van Tassel coming at you for Dynasty Owner. And we are doing something new for Dynasty Owner. This month in July, I'm going to do something that hasn't been done in Dynasty Owner before. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about tiers. Tiers are a way to organize players in fantasy football. A lot of fantasy players do that, and a lot of analysts do that. But we didn't really have any in Dynasty Owner last year. Nobody did it. It's new. It's much more difficult because, in addition to factoring in the player, their age, their potential production in this year and in future years, in Dynasty Owner, you've got to factor in the salary. That's one of those things that makes Dynasty Owner different is the salaries. We use real NFL player salaries, and we use a real salary cap, which is 70% of the NFL salary cap. So for 2021, it's $127.75 million. So all this makes it a little more difficult to do tiers than it does for other dynasty leagues or even in your regular redraft league. So first up, obviously, we're going to start with the most important player on the field. We're going to start with the quarterbacks. But before I get going too long, please make sure to like this video, smash that like button, and make sure to follow me on Twitter, SteveVT33, and also to follow Dynasty_Owner on Twitter. And if you're not subscribed, subscribe to the channel here on YouTube or on wherever you listen to your podcasts. So without further ado, we're going to talk about these Dynasty Owner quarterback tiers. So first thing we've got is, why does Dynasty Owner need tiers? Well, that's a good question. And mainly the answer is because there aren't any. Nobody has done them before. I mean, I did a search on Google for Dynasty Owner Fantasy Football Tiers 2021, and I got nothing. Nothing turned up on Google. So we need to rectify that. We need to have them. Tiers are something good. It's something a lot of fantasy analysts do and a lot of fantasy players use. So we're going to have them. We're starting now. So the first question is, how many tiers are there? And well, because it's Dynasty Owner, it's a little different. Obviously, we've got production, we've got salaries, we've got to figure out all that. You've got to not only do you have to figure out current salaries, but you have to think about future year salaries, how many years the player has left on their contract. So our tiers are going to go up to 11, just like the amps at Nigel Tufnell's guitars. They go up to 11. So here we go for the Dynasty Owner tiers. Let's get started with our first tier, which is tier 1A, which is our high-value young quarterbacks. And basically, we've got 5 of them here. They are Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert, Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence, and Joe Burrow. And all of these guys, they're high value because their Dynasty dollar per point value, which is the last column, are all very low. They're all projected to score 400 or more Dynasty Owner fantasy points, and all of them have low salaries, under 10 million, and those are intact for at least another 2 years. Kyler Murray is the lowest one here. He's only got 2 years, whereas rookie Trevor Lawrence still has 4 years left on his contract. So if we have a 1A, obviously you have to have a young B, 1B, and that's the high-value young quarterbacks who are getting paid soon. And it's a 2-person tier. It's Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. They've got very low salaries. Their Dynasty dollar per points are lower than most of the quarterbacks in tier 1A. But the problem is the middle column, the years. They both only have 1 year left on their salary. So they're going to get paid and get paid very well soon. And they're going to lose their value next year. So you got one of these guys. Hope you win this year. Make a run at the chase for the ring, because it's going to be harder next year when they're making $35-40 million a year. The next tier, we're going to talk about some low value but high production veterans. And who are those guys? Well, it's not just veteran doesn't mean just age. We're talking more about the fact that they're off their rookie contracts. Now, obviously, the GOAT, Tom Brady, at the top of the list has been off his rookie contract for a long time. But other guys are just getting off them, like Dak Prescott, Patrick Mahomes, and Deshaun Watson here at the bottom of the list. But you'll notice that all these guys, while you're going to pay a lot for them, you're going to get a lot for them. I mean, all of them are projected in 2021 to score over 400 Dynasty Owner fantasy points. So while they're not as valuable as the guys in tier 1A and 1B because their salaries are a lot higher, they're still going to be guys you want to have on your team and as a starter because they're going to produce and they're going to produce points. Obviously, Brady's a little different than the other guys on this list. He only has 1 year left on his contract, although he did sign an extension for 2020, so he'll probably be around until he's 45. And at the bottom, you've got Deshaun Watson, and we know about his legal issues. So it'll be interesting. He's being projected for over 400 dynasty owner fantasy points right now. We'll see whether that happens or if he produces any at all ever. But he makes this list based on his projections. So next on our tier is high value potential young quarterbacks. And who you'll probably be able to guess those guys. Those are the 6 guys here. We've got mostly rookies. We've got all first half of the first round draft picks here. 4 of them were in this year. One, Tua Tagovailoa, was taken last year, and Daniel Jones was taken 2 years ago. The main difference between these guys and the tier 1A and 1B guys is that their projected points are much lower. You can see all of them are under 400 projected points for 2021. That doesn't mean that they won't move into that category in later years, but that's why they're high potential young quarterbacks. And as a result, their dynasty dollar per points are all pretty much a little bit higher than the guys in tier 1A and 1B. Next, we've got tier 4, which could have been tier 3B. They're young quarterbacks who need to prove something to get paid. And we got 2 of them, and they're Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield. Both of them are on their rookie deals. Both of them were drafted in the same year, both in the top 3. Baker was number 1. Sam Darnold was number 3. But both of them only have 1 year left on those rookie contracts. And neither one has shot into the top echelon of fantasy quarterbacks. Both of them are projected to score under 400 points next year. Their value is about the same, but they need to prove something. If they want to make the $45 million a year like Deshaun Watson, like Dak Prescott, and like Patrick Mahomes, they're going to have to show something to their teams to get that type of contract. Tier 5. Tier 5 is an interesting tier. We've got some low salary quarterbacks with unclear futures. And you'll see the players on here, their salaries are all pretty low. I mean, Gardner Minshew is rock bottom low at $677,000 a year for 2 more years. Problem is, he's not the starter in Jacksonville anymore. That's Trevor Lawrence. However, if you have Gardner Minshew, you got to keep him. His salary is so low. And who knows, maybe Jacksonville trades him and all of a sudden he's a starter somewhere. He gets an opportunity. Drew Lock, $1.75 million. He could be the starter in Denver. He could be the backup in Denver. That's why his future is unclear. Jordan Love is the guy on this list who's got the most unclear future. He could be the starter this year in Green Bay. He could be 3rd string for all we know if Aaron Rodgers come back and Blake Bortles is the backup. So he's got a large fluctuation. I know he's got projected points there in value, but those are big question marks. And the last guy's a guy I kind of added to this list. He doesn't fit if you look at the projections because he has 0. But Brandon Allen of the Cincinnati Bengals is an interesting guy to have. He's only got 1 year on a $1.5 million contract. And while he's definitely the backup to Joe Burrow in Cincinnati, but Joe Burrow, he had a season-ending injury in 2020. What happens if he isn't ready at the beginning of the year? The man's going to be Brandon Allen. And for only $1.5 million, that's something that a lot of dynasty owners could take a chance on and see what happens. So all of these guys have low salaries, unclear futures, but because of those low salaries, they're worth having on your roster. The next tier we're going to talk about, we've got some veterans at the end of their careers on 1 year contracts. This could also be called the beard tier with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Ben Roethlisberger. Both have great beards. Both make over $10 million a year on a 1 year contract. Both are projected to get under 400 dynasty owner fantasy points in 2021. And Fitzpatrick is deemed to be a better value because of his lower salary and higher projected points. But both of them are pushing 40 and probably not around after this year. So if you got them, use them this year. Hopefully they start the whole year and help you out. they're $10 to $15 million less than a lot of the other quarterbacks who may give you this kind of production. So they're worth the play. And, worst thing happens, you don't have them next year. So tier 7 is a similar tier. These are veterans who might start in 21, and they're all on 1-year contracts. So we've got a big collection here. We've got 7. And this tier is quite a bit of a range. They're all in common because they all might start in 2021. They've all got 1 year on their contract, so you're not tied to them long term. You could be if they play well and you want to keep them next year. But, they range from like Blake Bortles, who maybe might be the starter in Green Bay if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back and Justin Love isn't ready. It's possible. I mean, it's a flyer. It's a little over $1 million. And you got 3 guys making about $5.5 million. Cam Newton, Jameis Winston, and Tyrod Taylor. They all could be the starter. They all could be a backup. We don't really know. Same thing with the guys below them. The 3 guys below them, it's Taysom Hill, Teddy Bridgewater, and Andy Dalton. All of them could start at the beginning of the year. All of them could be on the bench at the beginning of the year. But they're less of a flyer because their salaries are all over $10 million a year. But if you've got one of them, take a chance. They could turn out great for, like Teddy Bridgewater for $11.5 million. You could have the starter in Denver. Andy Dalton for $10 million. Might not be the starter the whole year. Supposedly he will be at the beginning of the season. We'll see what happens with that. So definitely an interesting tier. But the good part about this tier 7 here is that these guys might start in 2021. They might not. You can get rid of them at the end of the year. You're not tied into them long term. Then we come to tier 8. So now we're out of the veterans and we're back to some of the rookies. And these are what I like to call rookies with future potential. I don't think any of them are going to put up any dynasty on a fantasy points in 2021. If so, it'll be very small, barring an injury to the starter on their team. But they're all guys who were drafted at the end of the second round or later. So they have low salaries. Kyle Trask is the highest one in here, a little over almost $1.4 million. They're all rookies. I say rookies, except for because we've got Jacob Eason in here. He's not a rookie. He was drafted last year, but he didn't play. He kind of falls into the same category. There's nowhere else to really put him, so I kind of put him here. But then you've got the similar guys. You got Kellen Mond and Davis Mills drafted back-to-back. Their salaries are within $1,500 of each other. And, Mills, he could be the starter this year. You don't know. He could play a little bit this year. Mond, probably not, probably more in the future, but he's still at that low salary level where if you think he might be the starter, you might want to take a chance on him and have him just sit on your practice squad all year unless something dramatic happens. The next tier are the veteran handcuffs. And we're not going to go through those guys. You know who they are. They're your Case Keenums, your Joe Flacco's, your Mitch Trubisky's, your Colt McCoy's. I mean, you don't really want to have them, but if you've got a starter on one of those teams, if you read the article, you'll see all the teams associated with it. And you look at the teams and you think about the quarterbacks on those teams, and they're all low salary, 1-year quarterbacks who are probably really good. But if something happens to them, you might need their backup. So, and they're all pretty cheap. Keenum's the highest at 6 years for $6 million for 2 years, which explains why nobody owns him. And you've got guys who are making under $2 million a year on that list. The next one we've got some low salary quarterbacks on 1-year contracts. And the attitude I have on these guys is, some of them, it's like a why not? They might play, they might not, but they're going to all cost you under $1 million a year. Check out the article to see who they are. But you got names like Mason Rudolph, Kyle Allen, Josh Rosen, John Wolford in there. And they're all 1-year contracts. So if they don't play if they play this year, great. If they don't play this year, you didn't spend too much money on them. Then that's tier 10A, you'll notice, and we've got a tier 10B. If this was a regular dynasty league, those tiers would be combined because it won't matter how many years contract those guys have. But in Dynasty Owner, it matters, and these guys have multi-year contracts. There's only 4 of them: C.J. Beathard, Tyler Heineke, Will Grier, and Jarrett Stidham. They might play, they might not play. Heineke's got the best chance of playing. Stidham's got a low salary, so, he's kind of worth having around in case of an emergency. It's not going to cost you that much. But all those guys are interesting. And then we have our last tier, which is the sadly, the tier that we call veterans to avoid drafting due to high salaries. And who are these guys? Here are the 6 of them. You know, I don't know what to say other than you probably don't want these guys. I mean, they're all projected to be outside the top 12 quarterbacks. They all make $25 million or more a year. They're all signed for at least 2 years. If you look at the right-hand column, their dynasty dollar per point is very high. Now, admittedly, some of them are lower than somebody like Patrick Mahomes, but Patrick Mahomes is going to get you like 100 or more points than these guys. So you want Patrick Mahomes, even though he's higher salary, more than you want one of these guys. These guys are low owned. Carr's the highest owned. He's at 25% ownership, and that's because his salary is the lowest on here at $25 million a year. You know, all the way down to Kirk Cousins, who has a $33 million salary and is owned in less than 1% of leagues. So those are the tiers. We're back. Those are the tiers. I want to thank you for watching the video. You know, no more are we going to be able to, no more can you search Dynasty Owner Fantasy Football Tiers 2021 and get nothing. Hopefully this article will appear and you'll start getting at least that on the search. And then we'll have, in the coming months in July, we'll have our running back tiers, our wide receiver tiers, and our tight end tiers. We're not going to do kickers. Even though you have to have them in Dynasty Owner, we're just not going to do them for tiers. So thanks a lot for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed the video. Please like the video. Drop me a tweet if you have different of an opinion on this. If you like the tiers, you don't like the tiers. You think there's too many. Maybe you think there's too few. I doubt that, but we'll see. Or post a comment on YouTube in the comments section. And make sure to check out my articles and videos, which come out on Wednesdays. On Mondays, we've got Matt the Jerk at Dynasty Jerk. His articles going team by team for the whole season will appear on Mondays. And then Jay Pounds will be talking to you about how to rebuild your Dynasty Owner team, if that's what you need to do. And his articles are out on Friday. Be sure to follow him at Jay Pounds NFL on Twitter. And make sure to follow Dynasty_Owner on Twitter. So thanks a lot. Thanks for watching. And hopefully this has been helpful to everybody. Hopefully it'll help you, if you haven't drafted yet, to figure out where to draft some guys. And if you've drafted already, maybe it'll help stoke some trade ideas or thoughts about maybe somebody to pick up if you've got some salary cap room sitting out there. So thanks a lot for watching, listening, and have a